When we think of concentrating solar power, or CSP, we think of utility scale projects that can be sized at hundreds of megawatts. But there's a buzz phrase that's been taking the industry by storm, and that's micro CSP. And that's been pushed forward by my guest now, Darren Kimura, and he's CEO of Sopogy, which is pioneering micro CSP technologies. Darren, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Absolutely, and we spoke about a year ago now, and we talked a little bit about the technology. Basically does the same thing, heats a heat transfer fluid, creates steam, can generate electricity. You can use that steam for a variety of purposes, but you've scaled this down. It's about half the size of a regular parabolic trough collector. Why? What's the purpose of micro CSP?
That's exactly right. When we got started with our technology development, we're a Hawaiian company. We started in Hawaii. And what we wanted to try and do was figure out how to bridge the gap between photovoltaic, if you will, and large-scale concentrating solar power. And what we found was that in the markets that we were focusing in on, these are large industrial, commercial, and even small power, we needed to have lower temperatures and a lower profile so we could use the land most efficiently. So essentially what we did was we shrunk down the parabolic trough and focused on a more efficient manufacturing process, and that allowed us to reduce the cost of the system. So that, of course, brought it closer to customers, and as a result gave them faster paybacks and lower cost of energy.
Lots of applications here too for on-site generation. What type of applications are your customers engaging in?
You know, it's a very robust situation because we really at our core generate process heat. That process heat can be used for an industrial facility for steam or for hot water, drying agricultural products. But then you take it up a notch. You can use it to operate an absorption air conditioning system or even a refrigeration system using ammonia. And even at the high temp, we could do power generation and everything in between, including things such as desalinated drinking water, the creation of hydrogen, and really, we're only limited by the imagination. Anything that you use heat for now, where you would traditionally use natural gas to get that heat, or propane or diesel, you can get with this solar collector.
So what size projects are you installing today, and what size projects do you imagine?
Right, so our primary focus right now is on the power markets because that's where the incentives are. Our projects are generally about 1 megawatt to about 10 megawatts, and you know, maybe the nice average for us is about 5 megawatts. And what we do is we have a scalable deployments. So if our customer is trying to get to a 50 megawatt installation, they might, for example, use 10 5 megawatt size systems.
And you do have a 50 megawatt project that you've announced in Spain, possibly finishing up in 2010?
That's our goal, and that would be installed in modular chunks. So we're looking to get, you know, maybe the first 5 megawatt chunk installed, hopefully soon, and within the next quarter or two or so.
Mm-hmm. And I said that this was a buzzword, but now it seems like people are getting more comfortable with the technology, and you're really trying to help your customers figure out what applications work best for them. What are your customers saying to you now that people are more comfortable with this technology?
You know, it's very interesting. You're right. We want micro CSP to become a legitimate component of solar. I mean, there is a legitimate market for this in the process heat space. Our customers are now, in the beginning, our customers were saying, you know, explain to me how this works. Our customers are now coming to us with solutions and saying, hey, can we use it for this? Or here's what I've been thinking about. What do you guys think about that? So it's really interesting how they've adopted and are now taking it beyond even what we thought we were originally going to be able to do with the collector.
Are you seeing a bounce just from the general interest in CSP in general?
Yeah, certainly. The acceptance of CSP, the knowledge of using sunlight with mirrors to create heat helps a lot. But really where I think we're getting a lot of traction now is with regards to, if you will, some of the volatility in the markets for energy, natural gas pricing going up and down, and people trying to figure out ways to take that under or get that under control. So they really see this as being one of the very few demand side measures to help reduce the amount of natural gas consumed.
So you're looking at expanding your manufacturing capacity, building bigger projects in the megawatt range, the tens of megawatt range. Obviously a lot of turmoil in the debt markets still, very difficult to raise project finance. Has that hindered your ability to expand this year?
It's hurt everyone. I mean, it goes to the very core of our industry and all industries. But I think what's interesting about our projects is that because the project size is smaller, the capital amounts are smaller as well. So where you're finding or you're hearing a lot of challenges with regards to hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of megawatts for projects, we're seeing that some of those big projects are becoming smaller projects. So 10, 15, 30 million dollar type financings are still happening for projects. And that's where we really find our sweet spot. So yes, we're seeing some of it affect our industry, but not nearly as much, I guess, and maybe not as hurtful, if you will, because we have a multitude of projects, whereas some of the other competitors, if you will, in the space are doing maybe one or two very large projects.
So what's the trade-off in scaling down a traditional parabolic trough collector? Do you lose efficiencies, or do you have cost advantages because you can assemble it on site and you have less components to work with? What are the trade-offs there?
Right, so I think you hit on the very first one. We're less efficient. If you're going to do a 50, 100 megawatt solar farm, you should use some of the other high temp systems. Our system will be less efficient. What we do better is we get a very high energy density, so we can really fill an acre of land with a lot of collector because we have less shading, we're closer to the ground. We're also dealing with a lower temperature system, so we have very effective storage. We're not dealing with molten salts or exotic metals here. We're dealing with very traditional oils and hot water, which is pretty much off the shelf. And that gives our customers the ability to ride through clouds or extend even the solar day. That gives them the ability for their systems to address demand peak periods, which generally means they can get a higher rate of energy for that electron that they produce. So there are trade-offs here, but we have found a nice niche, if you will, for what we do, and at a cost price that works for the customer.
You've been an entrepreneur since you're 18, 19 years old. You've been in the energy space for a while. Where does this stack up in terms of the growth potential for all renewables or your endeavors in particular?
Well, that's right. I started my career working with the Environmental Protection Agency on some of their conservation side measures, and then I started in ESCO. And that company, I'm very proud to say, has done very well. But Sopogy and our micro CSP technologies in particular really have a game-changing type approach. I mean, we can make a big difference for our customers on their costs, fast paybacks, and really global warming, energy security. I mean, the technology and the space that we're creating with this technology really has the chance to make a big difference. So I'm the proudest, if you will, of all of the endeavors of the past that with what we've done here at Sopogy. I really am hopeful for our segment to potentially even be bigger than your large-scale utility solar farms or your rooftop home PV type systems.
And now you've gotten people comfortable with the concept. You've moved from Hawaii to Silicon Valley. You have an office there. How are you expanding your operations in 2009, 2010? And what does the market look broadly for you as a company?
Right, so that's correct. We expanded into Silicon Valley back in 2007. We also opened up a facility down in Costa Mesa, California, which handles a lot of our distribution for the United States market. We're now looking towards Asia and really the middle, if you will, Europe and maybe the Middle East as growing market sectors where they're now beginning to sense an urgency for energy security and of course, generation within country. So we're looking very, very closely at expansion out in that area. And of course, those are areas where we've got feed-in tariffs. We've got a very developed carbon market. So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of growth until maybe the U.S. market comes back from a tax equity standpoint.
Well, we'll be watching the company closely, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Again, that's Darren Kimura. He's CEO of Sopogy, a manufacturer of micro CSP systems.